big news in 2210, and I've talked about this in previous roadmaps, but the most important component in 2210 is the idea of the block editor and the delivery of the block editor. And we had it before; it was in beta, but in 2210, it's gone gold. And the block editor, I think, is an important new component in our content management arsenal, and I think we're going to continue building into it and making it a richer, maybe the de facto place where rich content should be edited in dotCMS. The reason why it is replacing our current WYSIWYG is that it works both in a headless world and it also works in traditional implementation. So when you make edits within the block editor, it's actually storing that as a JSON object under the covers. And so when you go and get the piece of content from in a headless perspective, you can parse that JSON and spit that out and drop that into a component and have that component deliver that content any way that you see fit. The same thing works within a velocity context. So in our block editor implementation, we have a method in velocity called toHTML, which will take the block editor, the JSON of the block editor, and format it just like it would be formatted, if you were using a traditional WYSIWYG. And you can see that on our demo site. So if I come to our demo site and take a look at this blog entry, you can see here, it's a rich text. It has different sections, and it is being fully delivered by the block editor. So if I come to the back end and take a look at the blogs and come down to the bottom, you can see here, this is the block editor. This is what is being spit out onto this particular page. Now, the very cool thing about the block editor is that you can embed different content within this content block, right? So the block editor gives you the ability to reorder blocks, right, which is why it is called the block editor. But it also gives you the ability, let's say I want to add, I won't add it there, that will look bad. Why don't I add it here? I can come and select content of, let's say I want to drop a product right here. So let's say I want to drop a snorkel. This piece of content here, if I go ahead and save and publish, this is actually a reference to this piece of content that is coming out of that JSON. And what you can do in your component that's rendering this is you can say, oh, okay, so here they dropped the product in here, and you can drop a rich component into the middle of your block editor, right? And this works headlessly. It also works, it works in a traditional CMS. It also works headlessly. So if I come to this demo SPA.dotCMS.com, this is our example SPA that is built using the same data as the demo site. So the demo site is powering both a traditional implementation. It's also powering a Next.js-based implementation. This demo SPA is actually hosted on Vercel. So it's not even, we're not even hosting our own demo SPA. But if I come, you can see here to that blog entry, and you can see, let me scroll down. Let me refresh this so it'll pick up the changes. And you can see here, I just dropped a product, and this dropped a product component right in the middle of that block. So using this in this way, you can build components to do things like, let's say I want to do a video, a YouTube video, right? Oops. YouTube video. I can pick a YouTube video and drop it right here in the middle of it. And that's going to drop that piece of content and all the metadata and information around that piece of content into the middle of the JSON object, right? And you can reorder this, move it up and down, what have you. I don't know if we have a video component. Then what you need is a video component that's actually going to deliver that video to the front end. I don't have a video component there, but let me show you an example of another component. Like you can just drag and drop images right onto a given block. So if I want to say I'm going to upload this image, I can publish that image and come back and take a look. And it's going to drop that image right in the middle of the block. It'll do that both there, it will also do that in the headless implementation as well. Once Vercel refreshes, Vercel takes a second to refresh. So all of that can be dragged and dropped. You can also add to your video, you can add things like captions, alt tags as well. So it makes it very easy to build this a rich content object that is fully manageable by your end users, but you have also full control of it on when that control is rendered. So jumping back to what we've done with the block editor, another feature that we've added is the ability to convert WYSIWYG type content to use block editor. Okay, so now this is for traditional implementations. You can come to an existing, let's call it this rich text, and take a look at this rich text. This is the old school WYSIWYG, right? What I can come and do on the demo site is I can come to my content type and say, let's create a new content type. And I'm going to create a title, and I'm going to create a WYSIWYG here. So this is as I build that, one thing, a couple niceties here. We've added the ability to take any content type and do two things. One, you can make an exact copy of the content type. I can say copy, and I can give it a new content type name and a variable, and it will automatically create a copy of that content type. That makes it really easy to duplicate content types. The other thing I can do is I can add this content type specifically to a menu item. And so I can say here, I want to create a menu item called test rich text, okay? And let's add it under this content tab. And I can choose what view I want to default to. Let's add it as a list view. And what that's done is it's added this new content tool here that is specifically built for rich text, right? It's specifically built for that particular content type. And that's how we built all of these different, content-specific menu items there. It just makes it very easy when you're delivering a site for your end users to be able to give them specific places they know if they want to go and edit blogs, they come and click on blogs. But back to our example, let me go ahead and take I'm going to go ahead and drop rich text in here. Here is a test. All right, I'm going to publish that. And what I can do is I can come to the content type now, and if I take a look at the WYSIWYG, it's going to give me this option down here, which says the block editor field will allow you can switch it to a block editor field. Now, it's not quite automatic. Like, we're not going under the covers and rewriting the content of the given field to JSON. Instead, what we're doing is when you come back and you edit anything that was built in a WYSIWYG, we're going to render it inside the block editor. Okay, and that's important to know, because what it means is that in your display, if you do choose to switch your WYSIWYG content to use the block editor, you'll either need to go to each content object and render it here in the block editor and go ahead and publish it, or you'll need to, like we've done, you'll need to have your implementation be able to handle if this is, you have to do a switch that says if this is block editor content, format it this way. If it's WYSIWYG content, just spit it out. The good news is we built the tooling in Velocity to make that very simple. So the path to using the new block editor is not that difficult, and you can begin to use it and have a content type that, let's say you have a content type of 1,000 blog entries. You can switch the field to the block editor, and future forward be using the block editor, even if you don't go back and update your old blog entries, as long as you're rendering that in Velocity if it's block editor formatted as a block, otherwise formatted as a WYSIWYG. The other thing you can do, and I showed how you can select the content type to include, you can whitelist the content types that you want to show in that list. So here you can see if I come here and I take a look at the contents, this is showing every piece of content. You can build a whitelist and say, I only want to allow blogs to be added to this particular piece of content, right? And you can also whitelist these blocks. So let's say you don't want to allow a code block or horizontal line or a block quote, whatever. This can be all whitelisted down to the exact blocks that you want to allow, right? In truth, the block editor field, in an interesting use case, the block editor field could be a stand-in for or a lightweight kind of relationship type field where you could have a block editor where all the user can do is link content. And then when you're rendering that in your component, you just get the content link and do with it what you will. But we give you the control to control the entire block editor. You can control the styling, the CSS of the block editor, as well as the blocks that are available. And the images are very easy to drag and drop and very easy to manage under the covers. You can pop open a file, drop it. You can also cut and paste an image. So if you can go to like just come to Google Images and search for snowboarding. Let's say I want to take this image. I can come here. I can copy the image to my clipboard and come and say, delete that image and say here, I'm going to paste that image into my block editor, and it'll paste that image right into the block editor. This is actually taking that image and creating an asset in dotCMS for that particular image, right? So what's coming next with regard to, so we see the block editor as foundational. And what's coming next for the block editor, things to include things like word and character counts. So all over the internet, you see time to read. Well, in word and character counts, this is coming in the next, I think the next version, but that's all going to be embedded in your content block. So when you're rendering your content block, you'll have access to the word count, the character count, and the time it would take to read that. You won't have to go and recalculate that. We're also going to be updating new media and image controls. This is an important one. I showed a little bit about like including a video. We didn't have the component to render that video, and you can include video now, but this is going to be very a bespoke video control that will allow you to view the video inline, things like that, as well as image controls, things like inline image editing, and having a bit more control about how the image is actually rendered or is referenced in your block, right? Another big thing that the block editor doesn't have is support for tables. So it's interesting. I think one thing to note in doing the conversion from your WYSIWYG to the block editor, if the block editor doesn't understand the HTML that you put into it, for example, tables, or if you have inline styles or things like that, the block editor is going to rip that out. So be mindful in converting WYSIWYG if you have things like tables or you have JavaScript code and if you're looking at the source code and you've embedded JavaScript, the block editor is going to rip that out actually. But all that said, it provides, I think, a much better end user experience than our current WYSIWYG, and we're just going to continue building into it.